Hi, this is Shauna. Before we get to today's guest, I want to take a minute to learn more about you, the listener. We've put together a short survey at fueltalent.com/podcast to gather information on who's listening and to give you a chance to make suggestions and comments about the show. I want What Fuels You to be a great resource for you and your interests, and I hope these interviews give you practical advice along with inspiration for your career and life. Help us continue to serve you better by going to fueltalent.com/podcast. Thank you so much. Now let's start today's show. Hi, this is Shauna, the CEO and founder of Fuel Talent. One of the things I have loved most in my 25-year recruiting career has always been the stories that people tell. Stories of leadership, career choices, company ideas, and team building. My inspiration for starting the What Fuels You podcast came from being curious about people's lives and wanting to help share their stories. What path brought them to this place? What decisions did they make that led to failures and successes? Who influenced those decisions, and what lessons were learned along the way? I hope you enjoy the What Fuels You podcast. Today's guest on the What Fuels You podcast is Manoj Pinna. Manoj is the co-founder and CEO of Seattle-based Pebble Health. Pebble Health levels the playing field between small businesses and startups and Fortune 500 companies for employee benefits. Pebble Health is used by people in 20 states, making it available for small employers to offer generous benefits such as fertility, zero deductible health plans affordably, or save 30% on benefits spending. Over the past 17 years, Manoj has been driving change in staid and efficient industries, including finance, fintech, and healthcare. Welcome, Manoj. So good to see you. Thank you so much for joining.
Hey, Shana, it's great being here.
We're going to start with some rapid fire. My first question is, I know your co-founder, you just said, is in India, but I'm curious if you could teleport anywhere right now, where would you go and who would you take with you?
I would go to India, just like my co-founder is right now. So I was just telling Shauna before they started that he's in India for his grandmother's 100th birthday. I would also go to India right now with my 3 children because just with the travel restrictions with COVID, we haven't traveled there. And my youngest hasn't seen her great-grandparents. And just in the last few weeks, my grandfather told me that meeting my 2 older children has been one of the highlights of his life, and he doesn't know how much more. He doesn't know how much more time he has because he's gotten COVID twice in the last year and a half, and he has other health conditions. So I would love to make it happen quickly.
Well, I hope you get to do that, because this question maybe prompts that type of response, and then you realize, like, I got to make this happen. So hopefully you can. What is your habit that you're currently trying to break?
I get on Twitter for 5 minutes every morning when I wake up, and that serves no purpose whatsoever. And I would love to break that habit.
Yeah. Does it end up turning into much longer?
No, the worst of it is probably 15 minutes. By the time somebody in my home needs my attention. So there's a natural stop right there.
Yeah. Well, with 3 kids, how old are your kids?
3-year-old twins and a 15-month-old
Oh my goodness.
toddler. Yeah.
I look back all the time on my kids' photos. I have 17, 15, and 12. And it's so cliche to say it goes so fast, but you are right in the thick of it. You're in an intense moment right now. So I'm surprised you even get 15 minutes. That's great. What book are you currently reading? If you've got time, I'm doubtful you even do. Maybe we have to switch it to like a TV show.
Oh, no, I mix it up with audiobooks as well. So I do this thing where I have the same book that I have as an audiobook, then I pick it up as a ebook. Never physical books nowadays because I don't know where I would carry it with me. Anyways, I'm reading Hamilton right now and really enjoying it.
Oh, Hamilton, nice. And what's a trait that you most admire in other people?
The ability to let things go.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially for entrepreneurs, right? This is your other baby, your 4th child. So Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so are you mountains or beach?
Mountains for sure.
Nice. And that's great that you're in Seattle because we've got mountains everywhere.
Yeah.
What is your favorite guilty pleasure?
Can I just use the catch-all and say food?
What kind of food? You got to get more specific.
I haven't met a cuisine I disliked so far.
No, you like to eat.
I like to eat and I like variety.
Yeah.
And so even when I travel, food is an important part of even that travel.
Yeah. And so, since your family's from India, have you found good Indian food in Seattle? And if so, what's your favorite restaurant?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in that Seattle is a very good location for Indian food. The best ones are on the east side with a couple in University District. So if you like South Indian food, for me, that's Chili's in University District or Kathakali in Kirtland.
Mm.
And North Indian food, I think it's more spread out. There's a couple of options even in Seattle that work pretty well.
So, South Indian food. Where in India are you from?
I'm from the Southeast coast, so South Indian is home food for me.
Yeah.
People laugh when I say this, but it is true. I've eaten rice 3 meals a day for years on stretch in different forms, because even Indian dishes like dosa, the crepes, they have a decent amount of rice in them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've gone a few thousand meals straight, having rice in every meal.
Well, that's quick and easy and it's predictable, right? And it's filling. So it hits on a lot of things that you need. Okay, so tell me about your childhood in India and when did you come to the US?
I came to the US after I finished college.
Yeah.
That's my first time traveling abroad, and because I grew up in Southeast India. All four of my grandparents were teachers, and my parents were educated, although not particularly well off. And yeah, grew up in India, went to school there, went to college at IIT Madras.
Yeah, I read
And
about that. I don't know a lot about the different schools there, or even I've not been to India, and I've I have many friends who are Indian, and also have had many guests on the podcast who are from India. And I always tell everyone, I'm like, I just want to go to an Indian wedding so badly. Like they look like so much fun, and everyone that I meet from India, as far as my friends, they have a big discussion about like the South from the North and like where specifically they're from. And there's a whole discussion around the food.
yeah, so I'll give you an example. So because India has developed quite a bit even over my lifetime, where when I was born, 60% of all Indians were completely illiterate. And we used to have to do this thing where you would help somebody down the street write a letter because they couldn't. Things are very different right now. But part of that is, there used to be these locations near where I grew up, where other relatives lived, and it was a day's journey away. And now you look at the same places on Google Maps and realize they are 50 miles apart. So going to the beach was this big thing you did once every 2 years. And then I realized I was born 35 miles from the beach, from the sea. And you just don't think about it if you grow up in India because it's all measured in time anyway, right? It's the physical distance doesn't matter. It's just the infrastructure was so much worse back then.
Yeah.
That's how it looked.
And what were some of the key like industries or what were some of the opportunities as far as jobs for your relatives?
Oh, that's a great one. So as I mentioned, all four of my grandparents were teachers in one form or the other, employed by the government. And the same was true also of my father. He was a bank teller. And because it's employment with the federal government, it was a very prestigious thing back in the day. And I distinctly remember this when I was, let's say, 3 or 4. Our landlady, the person who owned the apartment and who was renting it to us, gave me a fountain pen and said, I hope you'll be a notary one day. Um, so
Another prestigious job, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have to assume. Yeah, so that's how it used to be. And then when I was 6 or 7, India went through this rapid liberalization phase where they opened up the economy. And so, for instance, that's when Coca-Cola and all these things come to India for the first time. And that opened up a bunch of opportunity for people. So eventually my father quits his government job and becomes an entrepreneur in the private sector, which everyone told him was crazy.
What was his company about? What was the industry?
He started a stock brokerage.
Oh, wow. So at least he was using a somewhat of his bank teller like numbers. Right.
Yeah. I think the bank teller thing is just one of those things where you are way overqualified, but people tell you it's a secure job with the government with a lifelong employment and retirement benefits and all that. What's not to like? And that's how it looks at the time.
Yeah.
But then when you have other options, it immediately falls by the wayside.
Right. And so when you talk about people's education levels and having to write letters for people and your family, on both sides being educators, I'm sure that that's also extremely prestigious. I guess my question is, what was like important to the family as far as family values?
Yeah, education was huge, particularly because my grandfather was very well known as this. He was just a school teacher, but most of his work that he's famous for, he did outside his day job, where at any given time he might have 30 to 40 people living under his care, just from the nearby villages, who would be there to essentially study with him and prepare for their exams and essentially some form of trying to do better in life.
And how does the education system compare to the US as far as the curriculum?
Well, I would any day pick the US education system for my kids. There are some good things about education in India, which is they try to hold a higher bar on what is expected of students, and they they push people further. So they encourage high performers and they make fewer excuses for not high performers.
Right. Well, I think that's how it should be.
It is, yeah. But at the end of the day, the opportunities and the resources you have here are unparalleled. Things like computers, the quality of educators and their education level, the ability to touch and feel things, conduct experiments, not being forced to memorize unnecessary details, letting young kids be questioners. And I'm using broad brushstrokes here, but I feel like to a different degree, those things are better taken care of in the US education system than in places like India. And once again, these things are changing nowadays, and I haven't lived in India for a while, so
yeah,
I might be speaking about a snapshot some time ago.
Right. Just broad strokes, but it's helpful because you can get a sense. So I'm guessing just from hearing from you in talking about your family and your upbringing, that your heritage and kind of where you come from means something to you. But how would you describe it as far as how it's shaped the way that you see the world now that you're an entrepreneur here in the US?
Yeah, I think an important piece was just hard work and industry, which is, you don't necessarily control what station you're born to or exactly which skills are easier for you to pick up.
Right.
but you do have a high degree of control on how hard you work. And that was always drilled into us as children
Yeah.
in my family. Um, that was one. And then um, finding ways to add value without coveting what other people have. So particularly, I think with the milieu of get a government job and relax for the rest of your life, that used to be a real thing in India. But somehow in my family, it was always a don't, even if you do that, work hard,
Right.
serve the people who come to you for services, even if you're a government employee. That was the general attitude, and I took that pretty far with me in life.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, definitely. And so when you were little, I guess you said us, you've got siblings. Where are you in the birth
I have,
order?
I'm the oldest son, and I have a younger brother.
So you're the oldest. And so when you were little, would your brother, I guess, say, if I were to speak to him, that you exhibited leadership qualities as a kid?
Oh, I don't think my brother would have many nice things to say about me from when I was a kid. It's just one of those things where we get along just fine now, but all through childhood, we would fight.
Yeah.
We were just 2 years apart, and that might have been part of the issue. And both of us are stubborn in our own ways, just like our mother.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But I guess maybe not him, but your friends, like, or even you, like when you reflect back, did you kind of always have a sense that you were going to lead others?
Yeah, I can definitely see aspects of it at every stage of my childhood. Not consistently, not in every domain, but yeah, I think particularly when it came to certain types of extracurriculars I was interested in, I would take on those roles.
Yeah. And so who was your biggest influence as a kid?
Yeah, that would be both of my parents.
Nice. I'm sure they're super proud of you. And so you went to Indian Institute of Technology. What were the other options? Because I don't have a sense of the different schools. They're like here in the US, you kind of have a sense of what schools are people want to go to, and
Mhm.
depending on what they're interested in. Did you always know you were going to pursue engineering?
Now, I was at a crossroads about becoming a doctor versus going for engineering when I was in before high school.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was a pretty close decision, but I'm quite happy with the path I chose.
Yeah. What kind of doctor, or kind of, I guess, what kind of medicine did you want to practice?
Uh, uh, I knew this cardiologist that I looked up to as a kid, so yeah, I thought that's the path I would take
Yeah.
if I went
Interesting.
on that path.
And so how did you end up choosing that school? And I guess in reflecting back, was it the right choice for you?
Yeah, so when I went to college, there were six Indian institutes of technology, and they were the best six engineering schools in India, or at least they were in the top eight, let's say, all six of them. Um, so going to an IIT, if I wanted to do engineering, or at least attempting to go to one, was a bit of a no-brainer. Looked at it that way. Which specific IIT, which major? I went to the one closest to home.
Yeah, that's what I was
Uh,
thinking. I'm guessing this is the one closest to home.
yeah, it was just a 16-hour train ride each way. That's the one that was closest to home, and
Yeah.
yeah, I could see myself being just as happy at any of the other IITs, but yeah, no regrets, I guess, is how I look at it.
Yeah. And so tell me about the recruiting process coming out of school. Did you think about staying in India, or did you know right away that you were going to go to the US as far as like your first job right out of school?
I if Had you asked me then, I would have said I'm interested in living in India. Uh, so my plan was to go to B school in India and uh, work as take on an interest in corporate role for a few years and then go become an entrepreneur by myself. And it just so happened that, I was always big on just having an insurance option because, that's my family background, right? Yeah, we were educated, but we weren't particularly rich. So I guess it's my family's version of teach yourself welding in case this acting thing doesn't work out, kind of a thing.
Right.
So final year of college, this US-based firm comes recruiting to the IITs, and I go, oh, let me apply to that. That's a good backup option. And I do get the role. I was one of two people selected out of IIT Madras, and then I take a second look at it and I go, wow, all the people I met in this hiring process were quite impressive, and the work they're doing is very interesting for somebody like me.
Yeah.
Instead of going to B school in India, I could also go to B school in the US. I could rack up a couple of years of work experience at this thing and go to B school and then move back to India. And a US B school degree holds just as much weight in India, if not a little bit more.
Right.
So that was the plan. I moved stateside. And I guess I like living in the US so much that I never moved back. I'm here now 17 years.
17 years. Where did you move? Where was your first stop?
It's a very unusual place. I first lived in Richmond, Virginia, which is basically 2 hours south of Washington, D.C.
Yeah. And what took you there? You said that they were working on interesting stuff. What exactly were they working on, and which company?
Yeah, so I was recruited by Capital One, which I think is a top 5 US bank now in terms of size.
Mm-hmm.
Back then it was they've already IPO'd, but still a relatively small credit card company.
Mm-hmm.
And Capital One's unique insight was that, and this is from the 90s, when they were founded, was that you could use data and technology to make and execute on much better decisions than other people. And you can use that set of skills to offer everybody a different product. You can mass customize products you offer to people as opposed to saying one size fits everybody. That was a unique insight, at least unique by the world of banking and financial services in the 90s.
Right. What was your role there?
It was called business analyst, but what it meant was I was trying to make decisions on what products get offered, how are they designed.
Using data analysis.
Using data analysis, customer research, basically anything that needs to happen. But the company had a strong streak of use data, use numbers, make decisions in their DNA. Figure out who gets which credit card.
Yeah.
How are those things priced? But everything down to marketing strategy, which is there's 300 million Americans. How are you going to reach them? And what are you going to tell them when you reach them? And a big channel for Capital One back then was direct mail, which is you get these things in the mail. Capital One was the largest user of mailing services in the US after the US government. The company was mailing so much that they could go negotiate their own mail rates with the USPS. Just as a side note.
Yeah. Well, I think I have gotten lots.
You remember those?
Yeah, for sure. And so, so you worked at Capital One. You also had a stint with Zest Finance and Nubank. Did you kind of think that the projection for your career was going to be staying in finance and fintech and kind of in that sector?
No, not in particular. Yeah, so I think the set of skills that took me to a place like Capital One, or that pushed me from engineering to B school or wanting to go to B school, was my realization at some point that I have a set of skills that apply just as well in many different domains.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have any strong affinity. I did not have any strong affinity at any point in the past to a specific industry sector. I was more focused on how do you make decisions, and what specific set of skills I can bring to bear on how you make decisions and execute on them. That was the most interesting aspect to me. So I could have just as well been in not banking and financial services. I could have been in management consulting or any of these
Right.
allied sectors, and been just as useful.
Right. So are you still tracking fintech as a sector though? And if so, what's your opinion as far as the future disruption in that area?
Um, I don't track it a whole lot nowadays, just because my current work and my
Yeah,
family
you're
takes
deep in healthcare. Yeah.
enough of my time that it just doesn't leave me enough time. But I guess one very interesting that's happening across the globe right now is, the future just arrives unevenly, right? Which is, um, it's less true in the US. But a general thing, if you traveled in places like India or Brazil or Africa, would be that you could travel 50 miles and you could also be time traveling, because you would have gone back in time by 30 years by
Mm,
traveling 50 miles.
yes, much different
Um,
than in the US.
yeah, yeah. And that's true across countries.
Yeah.
Even even a place like Europe is further behind on the US on a bunch of things.
Right.
Um, so one general observation is the future has just come unevenly in fintech, and a large part of very interesting work right now seems to be do something that's working really well in one place and apply it in other places. Um, that's but and I do not mean that in a negative, pejorative way, because yeah, if it's just a phone app, that's not doing a whole lot of value add. But fintech is so complex when it comes to the regulatory structures and legal minutiae of how they can be delivered in each place, that by itself is a huge lift.
Yeah.
And then you add in the issue of different languages, terminology, different levels of talent in each of those places. These are very interesting endeavors. So I now see, particularly after Nubank's success, companies trying to do it in places like Indonesia or Philippines, or occasionally India.
Yeah.
Um, the same general ethos, but still very different problems that they need to solve for, and not any less hard. So
Right.
that's interesting.
Super interesting. And I saw that you did get to work. Did I read this right that you got to work in Brazil?
Yeah, yeah. I lived in Brazil for 3.5 years.
Oh my gosh. Did you get to choose that? Because I just am dying to go to Brazil, in India and Brazil.
Yeah, yeah. So I was living in the US for 9 years at this point, and moved out of the US to go live in Brazil for 3.5 years. So the Brazil stint was New Bank, or the company that eventually became New Bank. And yeah, that was definitely a very interesting
Yeah.
professional as well as personal experience.
And so, as far as these companies prior to starting Pebble Health, which I'm excited to get into, I guess which of them has been a great foundation for you as far as company culture and creating a culture that you want to emulate in some sort of way? And yeah, like which company would you most recommend to a friend?
Oh, that's a tough one, because I have each of these companies has their own unique facet that I I love, and I wish to keep for Pebble Health. Um, but probably the one that has the most in common with the parts I like with all my previous companies is probably Capital One. Yeah.
I'm excited to get into the culture of Pebble Health and kind of what you've drawn from your past and thinking through it. But first, so you started Pebble Health during the pandemic in 2020. First, why don't you start by telling our listeners what the company does?
Yeah, so we level the playing field between small and medium-sized businesses and Fortune 500 companies for employee benefits. So companies like Walmart or Capital One or Google do employee benefits very, very differently. And I gave those examples because none of those companies do it similar to each other, but they still have a lot of control on how it's done, and they have a lot of control on cost. Whereas if you are a venture funded tech startup or a mom and pop restaurant chain or any other business that doesn't have 5,000 employees, you are stuck with a very different set of tools and options available to you and your employees. So we fix this gap. We can get into any amount of detail. I can talk about this all day, but I'm just going to leave it at, by using Pebble Health, employees have been able to offer much more generous benefits. Early stage startups have been able to offer fertility benefits to their employees, or expanded mental health options, which is one of the number one complaints for tech employees nowadays. They've been able to offer $0 health plans, and they've been able to do all these things very affordably, sometimes paying just as much as they were last year. Other companies have been able to save up to 30% on benefits expenses while maintaining the quality or while making it slightly better for their employees. And people use the products now in 20 states, or I guess after last week, maybe 22 states. And overall, it's been a positive story for the customers we've been helping so far.
And how did you come up with this idea? Why was this specifically a problem that you wanted to solve?
I think the general idea has been floating around in my head and Vinay's head for some time. But the kick in the butt I needed to learn a lot more about this space was when I had to buy health insurance for myself and my family for the first time ever, which is when I took 2 years of work when we had our kids. This is after moving back from Brazil and after working away at New Bank for 3.5 years at a fairly demanding pace. And for the first time ever, I didn't have employer offered health benefits, and I had to go get on the Obamacare exchanges to see what's out there. And I was just shocked at the cost of it compared to what we were getting in return for it, or compared to what I expected our family to spend over the next few years.
Yeah, it's insane, especially as you know, we've had discussions, as a small business owner, it's crazy the amount that we're paying. And in this crazy competitive market, you have to keep, you have to stay in line with your offering as far as your benefits, so that people want to work there. How did you come up with the name Pebble Health?
We wanted a 2-syllable English word that had no connotations as they relate to sickness or wellness for that matter, that had a free domain. This is how calculating we are. And
then it was available.
Yeah. And that's what we went with. We tried a bunch of words. We tested it. We said it on the phone. We said it aloud, and we wanted to make sure that it sounded good on all media.
It makes you want to say it. I do like it. And so you mentioned Vinay, that he's in India with his 100-year-old grandma. And how did you guys meet one another? And what was the vetting process like to make sure that you would work well together as far as, startup co-founders?
We've known each other from the first day of college. So I guess that's an advantage of knowing somebody for a very long period of time.
Right.
The idea of working on a company together was, it was an easy decision when both of us were interested in the same things.
Yeah. When I think about it, though, because there's oftentimes it's kind of a no-brainer because like we knew each other as children or we went to college together. It seems like the even better way of vetting would be like we worked together side by side, because knowing someone and working alongside them can be two different things. And when I think about starting a company with someone, it's also like, what are our goals? What's our work style, work ethic, and where are our skill sets complementary? So what was your process like to kind of have those conversations, or was it just like, hey, let's just do this?
Oh, no, no. Unlike most entrepreneurs, I am able to see the downside to most situations. I feel like enough entrepreneurs usually just, particularly in the early days, are so optimistic that they cannot foresee any ways in which they might potentially fail. And sometimes that the downside to that is they do not plan and address those scenarios. And that's why some companies fail. So in my case, I'm perfectly capable of seeing those situations. So with Vinay, we did create a fake project to work on over several months. So we'll have a good sense of our own working styles, because we have never actively worked together in a work setting or in an office setting.
Yeah, that's smart.
And
That's really smart.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm gonna I don't know, try to remember that because it's such a good idea. And what is your business model as far as how the company makes money?
We charge a fixed per employee or per member per month fee to the employer, because we only work with small and medium-sized employers who are offering benefits to their employees. We say, here's the per head charge for working with us, with a small additional performance fee at the end of the year, depending on how we did through the year, including cost as well as employee experience.
And so the cost obviously is easy to measure. As far as the employee experience, is that measured by like some subjective measure, or is it like, hey, these are the benefits I used that I didn't know that I had, or like how are they measuring that?
So the benefits part is known upfront, where when we talk to an employer, we say, for your specific situation, and once again, no size fits all. So we do a quick work of figuring out exactly what a given employer needs. And we say, for you, this is the recommended set of benefits, and here's the expected cost through the year. So they know what benefits they're going to get. What they don't know is the employee experience and how happy they'll be with it, and would that make a difference in their to them as an employer in a competitive market. So what we do is we ask all employers the same set of questions upfront before they start working with us. We ask employees how happy they're with their benefits, that set of questions, and a few other questions of that nature. And we ask a sample of those questions every month afterwards. And so employers get to see before they started with Pebble Health, what is their employees' happiness or satisfaction with benefits being offered. And then they get to measure that over time, because you're asking the same questions to the same panel of people that you're aggregating.
Yeah.
And so that's how and there's several other things. We also have customer satisfaction ratings and other pieces. But yes, the rating themselves are subjective, but when you add it up, there's enough going there that most people look at it and go, an improvement there is a net improvement. And if it is worse, then Pebble Health is failing.
Right. And just an overall like, hey, would you recommend this? How satisfied are you and how much more engaged are you in the company because of what you're getting out of the benefits? So who's the subset that fills that out? Is that just the leadership or people making the decisions, or is it the actual employees prior to engagement of, Pebble Health? Like
it's always the employees.
It's always the employees. Interesting.
We're always big on, so the leadership would also be one set of employees, but they don't get any larger of a say
Yeah,
in the rating. So we always believe in the primary source of information at every point. One thing that people, I think, screw up pretty often is substituting some abstraction of customer feedback for the direct customer feedback.
Yeah.
So in our case, I'm big on, I do some amount of customer support every day. And I've done it even at New Bank when we had millions of customers. And it's one of those things where you could look at the numbers, you could look at the abstractions, but they never tell you the whole story.
Yeah. You keep your finger on the pulse that way and really know kind of from the customer standpoint, like what's actually going on, and you're more effective to ask good questions, and that makes sense. I'm guessing your competitors are not doing that. And I'm also guessing that you do have competitors. If so, like what's your specific competitive advantage over those other companies?
We offer a set of benefits that employers can never get. So if we did not exist, these employers would go with what's standard in the industry today, which is either something like the Blue Cross Blue Shield or is much smaller, not very tech-enabled, what's called a third-party administrator.
Yeah.
And by working with us, their employees have much better benefits, richer benefits. The experience is better, and the employer saves time and money.
Yeah.
So
all good things. And so you guys have raised how much money, and I guess how has that process been for your company, the fundraising process?
I would like to say it has been very difficult, and we had gone through a large amount of adversity for it, but the answer is we didn't. To date, we have raised 17.3 million
Wow.
across 2 rounds. And it's the same set of investors in both rounds.
Yeah, they were like, we want first dibs.
Yeah. So the lead investor is XYZ. The managing partner is Ross Fubini. And I've known Ross for a few years before he invested in Pebble Health, just because of our shared investments in other companies in either LATAM or Asia. And then our second largest investor is Founders Co-op, who's the connection between us.
Yes. We give a shout out to Chris DeVore.
Yeah. And an amazing set of investors.
For sure.
So I think a large part of your audience for this podcast is Pacific Northwest based. And I would highly recommend that people work with Founders Co-op if that's an option.
Yeah, Chris is amazing. He's kind of a unicorn in that he's, super smart, super connected, humble, honest, just a good person. So I agree with you. So you've raised all that money, and what's your plan? What do you want? What are you going to do with the money? I know that you're hiring a bunch, and I'm curious how dialed you are as far as your recruiting process and attempt to build the culture that you're trying to build.
Yeah, so our plan is to take what we are doing right now and make it something that scales really well to a large number of employers. So we are big on maintaining that employer and employee experience of working with us. And what that means is we need to be super deliberate. So today we are not still stepping on the gas. We are still in something like a closed beta. And there's a little bit of a wait list essentially for people to work with us.
Yeah, well, that's a good position for you to be in.
I don't know. We would love to actually do all that business today and open ourselves up wider. The issue is we have to also solve a variety of problems that are internal to us that the customer never sees. Wherein for us to grow 10x or 2x even. We need scalable solutions wherein that employee experience and employer experience stays constant, without us hiring at the exact rate at which we're growing customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a very interesting technology problem and a very interesting set of product and process design problems. And that is what we're spending all of our time doing right now. And that is what all our hiring efforts right now are in the service of.
Okay, got it. And if somebody's listening and looking for a job, why, as far as the employment branding part of Pebble Health, what makes your company special and why would someone want to come work there?
We are tackling one of the largest problems in the US economy. Healthcare takes up 20% of our GDP. And for all that, it's more than many other world economies combined. And for all that money, patient outcomes are no better than other developed countries. And experiences are also no better. I think, I don't even give, most founders do this thing where they talk about an anecdote that pushed them to start this company. But in my case, I don't do that because if just about anybody I talked to had one of those experiences, if not several, of the healthcare system and the health insurance system being very inefficient and difficult to work with.
Absolutely.
And so if someone comes works with us at Pebble Health, that's the size of the problem they're tackling. And if we are successful, 100 million people will have better care options and better ways to pay for that care. And we would change the arc of the US economy. So that's the reason for somebody to work with us. That's number one.
That's exciting. I just got some chills. Okay, number one. What's number two?
Number two is the people who are already here. My co-founder and I have had a lot of experience building companies from zero to very successful companies. And we have a bunch of other people here who are also very, very good at what they do. And so in terms of things like talent density, the advantage of joining a team like Pebble Health is whoever comes and joins us is going to get stretched like they wouldn't at most other opportunities they would run into.
Nice. And have you guys identified, it's kind of cliche to even ask, but I am curious about what you've identified as far as the company values. And then you've kind of clearly stated the mission of the business, but how are those two linked together?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'll tell you one thing that is not a value because we talked about it and said nobody will buy it. And that's not really us, which is humility. We're not humble people for sure. But let's see. One of our big values is solving big problems. So being willing to take on these large, hairy problems and saying, we will find a solution and we will solve this thing. And we're not scared by the size of this problem or the complexity of it is quite important to be a fit here at Pebble Health. After that, it is winning customer trust. So most people trust insurance companies in the sense of they trust them not to run away with their money, but they don't trust insurance companies or companies in this sector to offer them good customer support or to care about their unique set of circumstances and deal with whatever they need to do to get the medical care or the mental health care that they need. And we want to win our customers' trust day in and day out.
So if somebody's got something that they're dealing with regard to their benefits on like a Sunday, will you be the person that they call, or will you just be facilitating connection to another company? I guess I'm just confused about how all that works. And it's top of mind because, Yesterday, I was at urgent care with one of my kids who we were trying to get an x-ray from an injury. And then I was just curious, like how much it's going to cost. And I couldn't reach my insurance company because it was Sunday. Maybe it's unrealistic to ask, but that would have been nice.
So in our case, we do whatever needs to happen to fix that problem for the customer. And technically, our customer support hours are Monday to Friday, working hours on both coasts. But we have gotten questions on weekends, questions that no other insurance company deals with right away. And Vinay or I, the two co-founders, get paged, and we deal with those.
Yeah. And hopefully as you scale, it won't be you guys. It's like, that's not sustainable with your kids. But I also know that you guys have an app, right?
Yeah. So I don't mind it. So the way I would look at it is, I actually would want everybody in the team to get paged. And the reason for that is that customer support interaction is a failing somewhere else. So the best customer support is no customer support because nobody needs it, is how I would look at it. So I would say the fact that somebody had to reach out to you means you engineer or you designer or you product manager have failed at something. So yes, offer the customer support in the moment, but now go fix the thing upstream. So you don't get that call on the weekend.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point. I never really thought about it like that. And it's a perfect actual segue to my next question, which is, how do you personally create balance in your life? Given, you founded a company with like crazy funding and you're on this kind of rocket ship, you've got the little kids at home. How are you finding balance? What do you do to protect yourself?
Yeah, for me, it is family, work, a small amount of time for, I guess, health, wellness, exercise, some recreation. That's about it. And sleep, I guess. So that's about it. So it's in many ways, it's just a prioritization exercise and it's deciding what's important to you.
Yeah. What do you do for your exercise?
Nowadays, I'm skipping it way too often, but yeah, I just have a workout room in my home, which has just about everything I need. And I live 2 blocks from Volunteer Park.
Oh, nice.
So I go for a run there and then lift a few weights.
So my final question for you, and thank you so much for joining, is what fuels you?
What fuels me? Family and work, I guess.
Good things.
Yeah, quality time with the children. They're at that phase in life where they ask very interesting questions, and everything is still a new experience for them. I'm really enjoying that this phase of their lives, much more so than people tell you it changes. Every phase of life is different, but 3-year-olds are just more fun than newborns. Yeah, and the other piece is I'm very excited about what we're doing here at Pebble Health and the amazing team that's helping us execute here. And I'm looking forward to the impact we would have on the 90 million people who get employer-provided benefits.
Thank you for listening to the What Fuels You podcast. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, and follow us on social media to keep up with the latest news and episodes. You can also contact us at podcast@fueltalent.com to provide feedback, ask questions, and share topics or guests you would like us to cover in the future. We hope you feel inspired by our guests and that we have helped fuel your day. Join us next time for another episode of What Fuels You.